Hey, I'm Isabel Bercaw, and when I was 12 years old, I founded a multi-million-dollar bath and body products company called the Bomb Bath. After 5 years of building my own brand, I've discovered a passion for helping young and innovative entrepreneurs tell their stories. Hopefully, you'll be inspired by the guests here on Build-A-Biz and maybe even motivated to start a business of your own. Let's get into it.
This is Build-A-Biz with Isabel Bercaw.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us back here on Build-A-Biz. I'm your host, Isabel Bercaw, and today I have a guest joining me, and her name is Grace Wethor. She is the 19-year-old model, actress, and brain cancer activist. Grace, thank you so much for joining me on Build-A-Biz today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yes, I know. I'm super excited to finally get to interview you. I feel like I've been following your story on Instagram for a while now, and you never cease to amaze me. So it's super cool to interview you here today.
Thank you.
Of course. So tell us the story of why you became such a motivated person at such a young age.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, way back in the day, I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is also where Isabel grew up. So we kind of crossed paths there. But I was always a very active kid. I was in a lot of sports. I loved school. I was just always doing something creative. And then when I turned about 13, I just got very sick and tired, and no one could figure out what was wrong. I went to doctors for about 6 months, and they were all just like, she's healthy. She's just a teenager. Maybe she's like, they had no idea what was happening. So after those 6 incredibly frustrating months, one day my mom was like, let's just check and see if you have mono. So they did a blood draw, and they noticed that my red and white blood cell count was off. So I was sent to the Children's Hospital in Minneapolis and checked into the hematology department, which is the blood cancer department. I did not have leukemia, which is what they thought I had, but I would spend another 6 months as a patient at that department before they would do an MRI on January 9th of 2015, which is the day they discovered that I had a brainstem glioma, which is a tumor in the deepest part of the brain. Because of location, the tumor is inoperable. Chemotherapy and radiation have a very slim chance of working, and this type of tumor usually has about an 8% chance of survival for 6 months. So I was told that day that there was nothing medically that could be done to help my tumor at this time, and I was sent home with the recommendation to drink Gatorade whenever I passed out, because that was something I was really struggling with at the time. And that was kind of, for me, the end of my brain tumor journey, which is it's a very unique story for brain tumor patients, because most people who are diagnosed, they're going into surgery or treatment the day they find it. And for me, the day I was diagnosed was the day I checked out of the hospital. So I was kind of left with this new perspective on life. And as a 13-year-old, only having what I was told, which is 6 months to live, I kind of had to start reevaluating what was really important to me and what I wanted to spend every single day doing. I grew up loving entertainment and arts. I was always making movies in my basement by myself. I'm an only child, so I had to entertain myself. And so I decided that was something I really wanted to pursue full force, especially if I only had, half a year left. So we rented an apartment over the phone in LA. I don't recommend that. But we gave it a shot, and we moved to LA a couple of weeks after I was diagnosed. And those 6 months, I went back for my checkup, and the tumor was stable. No one knew why. Those 6 months turned into a year, into 2, into 3, and I'm now 6 years stable with my tumor, which is pretty much unheard of in the medical community. I still have the tumor. It's still something I have to fight, but I now try to take this new perspective that I hold, kind of about life and time and really doing what truly matters, and put that into every single day and live every day to the fullest, and every day as if it's your last. So I think that's where I really developed this unique mindset. Suddenly all those things you think are so important don't matter anymore. A science test will not change your life. And I think that's how I used to live. And so it really opened my mind to living life in a unique way, which allowed me to open my perspective into going into entrepreneurship and business at a young age. So yeah, that's kind of how I became who I am.
Yeah. So you really just, first of all, it's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
I'm in awe of what you've accomplished too, and like just how motivated you've become through that experience. And that would just be something so scary to face as
I was 13 when I was diagnosed. Yeah.
13 years old. That's crazy. Like my brother's 13 years old, and that when you hear a story like that,
Mm-hmm.
it really just like, it hits home, you know, and I don't know. I want to say I'm proud of you, even though I don't
Thank you.
very well, but also Minnesota represent.
Yes.
Yeah, the bold North.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is it just me, or when people call it the Midwest, does that just really bother you?
I don't know. I've always I feel like everyone growing up their way is like, oh, Midwest nice. That's like the Minnesota nice, Midwest. I don't know.
Yeah, for some reason it bothers me, but maybe I'll go.
Maybe it's just how I've grown up. I'm like, oh yeah, Midwest. But I guess you're right. It's not technically Midwest, but that's what they call it.
Midwest is cool too. We'll give them credit. And then, so you then went into acting and modeling. Also, do you think it was at all like a coping mechanism, almost to kind of like escape from what was right in front of you, and then you could kind of like play this different part at all? Do you think that's
Yeah.
motivation?
Yeah, I think for me, I feel so incredibly grateful to have had something like acting that I loved from such a young age and something that motivated me. I think a lot of people, when they're diagnosed with something like this, they unfortunately have to spend a lot of time in bed and a lot of time in the hospital. And I had those days. I had those days where I could not get out of bed no matter how hard I tried. And I had to find sit-down activities that I could do from the comfort of my own bed, which also led to amazing opportunities in journalism and Teen Vogue and things like that. But for me, acting was something that got me out of bed every single day, and it forced me to get dressed. And I was also kind of on this little crazy adventure where I had just moved to a new city and everything was new and everything was exciting. So yeah, every day I was getting out of bed and I was getting dressed so I could go to acting class, no matter how bad I felt inside. And leaving those acting classes, I felt like such a different person. Like you could see my face light up. And I just feel so grateful to have something like that technique because I love stories. I love storytelling, which is why I love acting and I love filmmaking. I think there's something so fascinating about characters and the way we develop them and the comfort that movies and television and music can bring us. It's really a whole nother world that we can dive into. I spent a lot of my time when I was really sick reading because it was just like you could go to a different world. You didn't have to be in bed all the time. So yeah, I definitely think acting helped me get through those really dark times. I mean, physically got me out of bed and it allowed me to be creative. So yeah, I mean, for anybody who's going through anything like a life-changing event, whether that's a divorce or an illness or a death of a family member, I think having something that you love that gets you out of bed every day is the key to getting through it. It really saved I truly believe acting saved my life, as dramatic as it may sound.
I mean, you're in the drama industry. So. That's so cool. And honestly, like even on the days that you couldn't get out of bed, that those reading moments and those acting moments, those storytelling moments, they were with you too. So I'm sure that was really vital to, you know, what you wanted to do every single day. It was like, this is what you had access to, and this is what motivated you as well. I love that you say that you love storytelling, because if there's one thing I can relate to in your entire story is that I also love storytelling, and that's why I am pursuing a career in radio right now. I love that. I love that we get to tell your true, authentic stories.
Yeah, I always say that I'm a storyteller first. That's kind of the title I've adapted over the past couple of years, just because I've always had a very broad range of interests, from filmmaking to acting to everything in between. But going back to it, it's all about telling stories that I find fascinating. I love sharing things with other people. And so I think that's just such a good term. I love that you like that term too, because it's such a broad term that covers anything important that we feel we need to share, and giving a voice to those who may not be able to share their stories themselves. So yeah, that's kind of my number one passion in life.
You hit it on the head. That's so cool. So you said that that's kind of like what the title that you give, or like the job description that you give, like a storyteller. And speaking of title, do you think you could tell us the story of your book title, You're So Lucky, and tell us a little bit about that project?
Yes. So You're So Lucky is a book I released when I was 16, so about 3 years ago now. And it came at a very interesting time in my life. I was about 2 years into diagnosis, I believe. And I had been put in a support group when I was first diagnosed with kids who had similar tumors to mine. And I found out around that time that I was the only one left in that support group. And so I felt this kind of weird, like lost aspect. I don't know, just kind of knowing that those other families were fighting it as well that whole time, it kind of made it a little better. We didn't really talk to those families often, but we knew they existed. And so then I realized how this lack of community was I kept going back to it, and I knew I wanted to do something about it. So I started searching the internet for other people who had brain tumors, different types of tumors. Some had spinal tumors. Some had NF1 or NF2, which is like a disease where they develop multiple tumors in their spine and head. And so I literally just searched like hashtag brain tumor on Instagram. It's like that simple. And I'd spend hours just looking for people that I thought had interesting stories to tell. And I started connecting with these people and building this little community. And I realized they all needed a platform to share what they were thinking and how they were feeling at the time. So that became a book. I did not know what to call this book for a while. I just kept tabs on these people and their stories and how they developed. And as I started writing my own chapter for the opening of the book, it kind of clicked because I realized there's a little excerpt in the beginning of the book. It talks about when I tell my story to people, they say, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." Then they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, that's terrible, but you're so lucky." And I thought it was so interesting that people kept saying that to me, because when you talk about it with other brain tumor survivors, they're like, "But would you have told me I was lucky 3 years ago when I was given a death sentence? Would you have told me I was lucky the day it happened? Would you have told me I was lucky if would you have told my family they were lucky if I died?" It was just a really interesting relationship a lot of us had with the word luck, because we didn't know why we were still here, and a lot of our friends and our peers and our fellow fighters weren't. We could not give you an explanation for that. We still can't to this day. We don't know. And so this backwards relationship with luck, I was just very interested in what that meant to others. And so I gave them this prompt, "You're so lucky." And they all said that they would get the same exact conversation when they told people they had brain tumors and they had survived X, Y, or Z long. And so everyone started writing about their relationship with luck, and we all had very different opinions. Some people did not believe they were lucky. Some people believed they were lucky. Most people said they believed they made their own luck, which is kind of my personal definition now, as well, from meeting all of them. A lot of us are like, we believe in luck in the aspects of, oh, you can be lucky and win a lottery, but we're not sure luck had anything to do with this. We worked very hard to be where we are, but then we look at a lot of other people and we're like, but they worked hard too. So I still can't tell you if I think I'm lucky or not. I go back and forth on a daily basis, and I still, I don't struggle with it, but I ponder it a lot. I think that's a better word. So yeah, "You're so lucky" came from most of the conversations that I have when I tell people about my story. It's, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, but you're so lucky." And so, yeah, that's kind of where the book title came from. We released the book. It was a bestseller on Amazon. We got to go on a Barnes & Noble tour across the country. And what I really loved about it is, for me, I always say it's not about the contents of the book. It's about the community and the support we were able to create around the project. So all of the Barnes & Noble events had doctors, they had patients, we had panels with different people, family members, patients themselves, survivors. It was really about creating a community. I was like, I don't care if you guys read the book or not. It's about the people that you get to meet through this book. So yeah, that's been 3 years since it was released, and we're working on other stuff surrounding that same topic now that I can't necessarily talk about. But yeah, that book, I think, changed my life because it was the first time I really told my story in a very professional sense. I had given a TED Talk before then, but this was really the first time I went into depth about the struggles of it as well.
Oh, just a TED Talk. No big deal.
That was its own difficult thing, because that was the first time I ever talked about my story in a public setting. And I think, going back to the TED Talk, it was that day I realized how many people came up to me afterwards and told me their own stories. And they weren't always brain tumor stories. Sometimes they were health stories. Sometimes they weren't. But I realized that day how important it was for me, since I was able to tell my story and I felt strong enough to do it at that time, to continue doing that, and how it could hopefully change and help people's lives. And so that TED Talk really inspired the book. And then the book happened. And then I was like, okay, this is something I feel I need to do, because I saw how many people felt a connection to it and felt that they found a community through something that I just came up with in my bedroom. It's so simple, but those little actions that we decide to follow through on can really change people's lives if we give it our best shot. So yeah, that's kind of the story behind the book.
And I like that advice too. Like, if you follow through on something, you can make it happen. And that kind of goes back to making your own luck. Obviously these are two different playing fields completely, but people often tell me I'm so lucky that my business has succeeded. And part of me wants to say, yeah, it's a lot of it is luck, but part of it is also, my family's worked really hard, and I'm sure that you've worked really hard each day to stay positive and keep going when life gives you this crappy situation. But then you kind of look back and you're like, yeah, I am lucky a little bit. And I think that's something that, I would recommend everybody read your book. I've read it. It's amazing. It really inspired me. And honestly, if anything, just because people, it shows you kind of something that you touched on in the beginning, which is just you should live your life every day to the fullest. And, maybe don't even worry about getting lucky. Just worry about having that mindset and, maybe manifesting that luck. But don't worry too much about like the nitty gritty. Like, am I going to get lucky on my science test? You just got to live your life to the fullest and make your own luck. So I love that.
Yeah, I think life is mainly about just making sure that you love what you're doing every day. And I know that's not possible to the fullest extent for everyone because we unfortunately have responsibilities on this earth, which is something that I struggle with a lot. I'm like, God, why do we have money? Like, why is this a thing? But I think for me, just making sure that you have something that you're passionate about, and it can take a long time to find that. I'm extremely lucky to have known what that was. But I think just trying things until you find something that you love, and you don't have to be good at it, but that's how dream jobs come. It's something that you love and you're good at, and people will pay you for it. So if you can find something that you love that you can just start working on, and you don't have to be extreme. You don't have to quit your job and move across the country, but just making sure that you put aside a set amount of time every day to do something that you truly love. I think that's how we make sure that we're living our best life. It doesn't have to be extreme, but just to make sure that we have something that we're passionate about.
Totally, for sure.
Okay, Grace, we're actually going to take a really quick music break, but when we come back from the break, we will continue to discuss your story. All right, everybody, welcome back from the music break. If you're just joining us now, I am here with Grace Wethor on Build-A-Biz, and she is telling us about how she has overcome the challenge of facing brain cancer at a very young age. And she also wrote a book about her experience with the help of some other fellow brain cancer fighters and cancer fighters, and she is very inspiring. So I can't wait to get back into our interview with her.
So you went on a book tour. That was super cool. We're kind of going down the list right now. It kind of seems like so we have the book tour, and you wrote this book. Now you're writing movies. You're directing them.
Yeah. I think for me, it just seemed like the best next step for me to move forward in my goal of being a storyteller. I've been making films since I was very young, and I've been working in entertainment since I was about 13. I think that's when I got my first agent. And so for me, just being on set, I always loved the entire process of it. I'm not going to claim myself to be an incredible gaffer or DP or some kind of technical person, but I just loved watching people do those jobs. I loved watching people set up lighting, and I loved watching the transformation in the costume. I grew up in figure skating and circus and random activities in Minnesota because they have a lot of amazing things to offer there. So I always loved the entire process of seeing something from start to finish, being in plays, things like that. And so it felt like the next best step for me. And I directed a couple films this year during quarantine, which is I directed my first major film in August, at the worst time in quarantine, alongside a friend of mine, Lori Levenfeld. We were one of the first films by, I don't know, you guys probably don't know what this is, but SAG is our union. And so we were one of the first films to get approved by SAG to go back to set and start filming again. So yeah, it's been a pretty crazy quarantine for me. I've had a lot of new experiences, and I'm very excited. And yeah, you were saying I wrote a movie as well during quarantine. So yeah, just I'm obsessed with film. So I love to pursue it in any way I can.
Honestly, I am too. So if you ever want to have me to your set and I can just creepily
Yes.
sit in the back and watch what's going on, I'll be like, anyone need donuts? I'll
That's
try to
literally me.
ask you, where did you figure skate?
I figure skated at the Figure Skating Club of Minneapolis, I think it was called. And then I moved to Braemar. Is that
Yeah,
what
you
it's
were at
called?
Braemar, I bet, because
Yeah.
I figure skated at Parade Ice Garden. So
Oh, yeah.
that's downtown in Minneapolis. And I didn't move to Braemar, but I did skate at Braemar a couple times for competitions and stuff.
So
So that's
funny.
just like a fun connection we have there. I don't know if
Yeah,
every Minnesotan has taken skating lessons at
maybe it's a rite of passage. You just have to try figure skating, and I stuck to it. Did you do synchronized figure skating or
No,
solo?
I never got into synchro.
Okay.
Because I was not able to synchronize myself with anybody. I just kind of did my own thing. I would get like points deducted for being too like not muscly enough. So I just like that lasted till I was about 14, and then the business, my bath bomb business, kind of started taking off. So I kind of decided to pursue that because the figure skating career wasn't really going anywhere.
That's funny. I would always get points deducted because I would lip sync, and they're like, "This is not a performance, Grace." I'm like, "No, guys, life is a performance. This is not a dress." Who said that? They're like, "Life is not a dress rehearsal." I don't know who said that. But
Something I don't know.
someone said that. But I think it was Diane von Furstenberg said that. But I would always lip sync and try to turn it into a whole show. And they were like, "This is not a show. This is about technicalities." And I was like, no. So
yeah, I know there's so many.
That's funny.
If anyone out here is a figure skater, you'll know that there's so many like technical things that you can get points.
It's so, yeah.
Like as much as like even if like your tights aren't pulled over your skates properly, they're like a point off. And I'm like, I'm just like 13 years old and you guys are totally judging me right now and I need to leave. They're fun experiences too.
Yeah.
So you were a figure skater, you were a really active kid. Now you're in this sort of like Hollywood industry and you've created Grae Inc. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's all about?
Yes. So Grae came together very naturally. I think a lot of people are like, why did you decide to create this company? And I was like, to be honest, the company created itself and I just kind of slapped a logo on it at the end, which I think is how the best things come together. I think a lot, your story as well, like you guys did it more for fun, but then you're like, oh, wow, this is working. Let's actually take this seriously now. Because it's really hard to force an audience connection sometimes, I think. And so I didn't necessarily be like, oh, I'm creating this company. I had started producing bodies of work like films and social media and things like that for different companies. And I was seeing these opportunities to be a more, full-scale media company and offer these services. A lot of people were coming to me to manage their companies and manage their branding and manage their marketing. And then I was also turning 18. So it was time for me to start thinking about the investing side of things. I was working a lot with LVMH and Condé Nast. And so I started thinking about shareholding and what it meant to be partial owner of these brands that I was working with. So Grae became a place to hold these shares. Just kind of, as I said, slapped a logo on it at the end. The company had already kind of started itself. And now Grae is a media and holding company specializing in luxury concept design. So we work on film productions and things like that. So yeah, it's been it's been about a year and a half now, I think, since we put the actual name on it. And it's just been an incredible opportunity to work with so many different individuals who are also passionate about film and entertainment and media. And it's just kind of grown larger than I could have ever imagined.
That's awesome. If anyone wants to check out Grae on Instagram, they have some really beautiful content. I know you put together like a young Hollywood project. You want to talk about that for a few seconds?
Yes. Yeah. So like I said, I think life is about being passionate about the things you do. And I'm extremely passionate about my job. I love working probably too much. But for me, I just wanted to make sure that I was, again, storytelling and giving a platform to those who wanted to share their stories in any way possible. And so along came the idea of Grae Young Hollywood. It's a list of individuals that I believe are approaching Hollywood with unique perspectives. I went into this industry with a very unique perspective, which was doing everything for fun and experiment and for the love of film. That's kind of my motto. I'm always like, for the love of film. Because things often get very stressful and you forget why you're doing what you do. when you have to like figure out budgeting at like 2 a.m. or finishing a script by a deadline, and it's for the love of film. It's why we all do what we do. So I, again, went back to this idea of community and what I saw that my book was able to do. And we started putting together this little group of people. I was going to call them kids, but we have older people as well, up to, I think the oldest one is 26 or 27. But it's just a group of young people that I think are really doing amazing things in the industry. And it's all the way from people with like 10,000 followers to people with like 5 million followers. It's not just people who are making an impact on social media. It's people who you don't always see behind the scenes who are doing things that are just genuinely good people. So the Young Hollywood Project grew and it became this kind of little class. I hope we get to do another one. We don't know because of COVID if we'll be able to shoot all these people in the same room. But yeah, it's just a group of young people that I really believe in, and they all align with Grae's values and what we do as a company. And they're people that I always say, they're people that I just hope to work with in the future in some capacity. I ended up casting 3 of the girls who were on the list in a movie that I directed in August. So they're just people that I want to work with, and I think you should always surround yourself with people who are like that. It makes your life a lot more fun.
Totally. That's probably my favorite part of my job right now. Working in radio is just getting to meet cool people. And like, we would have never had a chance to have this conversation normally. But for example, like the other day I met some kids who like made their own sock company. Or, I met a team of people who introduced me to my new favorite matcha brand. So it's just super cool getting to like interact with different people. And I like that this is like super unique. You put them all in a little book together, like a little portfolio together. Now you have everyone, your little contact is there.
We have a physical copy of like the Young Hollywood book, and we literally got to like flip through the book with this whole production team, and we're like, oh, they would be wonderful. So yeah, we have a little physical book of people that I would work with on any day of the week. So
that's awesome. It's almost like a mini agency, just like writing tips.
Yeah.
That's so fun. And so other hobbies that you have, I know that you're big into fashion. I want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, fashion has always just kind of been a way to express myself. I had a uniform in school, and I was always trying to add ribbons or cut my socks or do something to my uniform that I wasn't allowed to do, but that's okay. But my teachers always understood. They're like, okay, this is just Grace doing her thing. It didn't fly. I got uniform infractions all the time, but that's okay. And so I think for me, that love of fashion just developed at a very young age as a way to express myself. It was just another aspect of playing a character all the time. It was a way for me to be myself and be somebody else on a daily basis. But then when I got sick and started having to do sit-down activities, like I mentioned earlier, I started a fashion industry essentials program that was all online. And it was like a year-long program. And we just learned about everything you can imagine in the fashion industry. It was through Parsons College of Design in New York. Mm-hmm. And I learned about the business of fashion and the history of different designers. And I truly fell in love with the history of what it means to be a luxury brand. These brands go back hundreds of years, and they were, the Louis Vuitton trunks, they were on the trains, and they were before like wheels were invented. I love the history of fashion. And so when I graduated from that Parsons program, Teen Vogue scouted me and asked me if I wanted to come be a Teen Vogue It Girl, which meant I would scout and create content for their magazine around the world. And I was like, wow, this is like dream job opportunity right here if we're talking about dream jobs. And so I started going to fashion weeks, and that was really how I fell into modeling, because I was going to these fashion weeks already. And so I think for me, just being able to travel the world and meet people who loved fashion as well and loved what it meant to be these characters and get to express yourself, I truly think it's just another aspect of who I am and this kind of overall universe that I'm trying to build. So yeah, I think fashion is a big part of my career and how I ended up where I am today.
I love it. And I think some people look at name brands and they think like, oh, this is just all for clout. But I like that you really went in, you're like, I'm going to learn the history about this. And then that's why you like the brands,
I think there's so much behind it. And now we have designers like Virgil Abloh who are mixing, streetwear with luxury fashion. And we're seeing these these brands that are hundreds of years old coming into a new generation. We saw it happen with Gucci. Like the fact that Gucci makes sweatshirts, I think is like unfathomable to people 10 years ago. And I think there's something really wonderful about it, about our generation being able to literally change the history of fashion. I think there's something really exciting happening there with that merge of high and low end fashion. So yeah, I think we're at a very exciting time, and I think we'll start to see that trickle into film and into entertainment. We already have, with YouTube and things like that, but into more traditional entertainment like film and TV. So yeah, it's a very exciting time for all aspects of fashion and film.
Right now I'm just thinking about in The Devil Wears Prada when he goes, "Are those?" And she goes, "The Chanel boots." Yeah, they are.
Yes.
Like, yep, that's my experience with fashion. But well, Grace, thank you so much for coming on Build-A-Biz today. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have left, but everyone definitely go follow Grace on Instagram because there's so much there. There's so much to learn about her too every day. And might I add that your page is just downright beautiful. Like you have this aesthetic there that I think everyone should go see. So at Grace Wethor, Wethor is spelled Wethor. So definitely go check that out. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
All right, if you want to listen to that episode again, it will be on the Build-A-Bear YouTube channel. Just go to the Build-A-Bear radio playlist, and you'll find all the Build-A-Biz recordings that we've done so far. So you can listen to past episodes as well. And definitely follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is isabel.bercaw. And then you can also follow the Build-A-Bear radio Instagram as well if you want updates from there. So thanks, everyone. Until next time. Bye.